Hello and welcome to Life Under Lockdown. During this pandemic crisis, there has been a lot of focus and attention on the message, the important message, stay at home. But what about the question of those who don't have a home? Well, the Wayside in Glasgow is one such institution which has for many, many years now been helping the homeless and destitute in Glasgow. I'm delighted today to be joined by Pat Kearns and John Fletcher from the Wayside Club. So welcome both.
Hi, John. Hi.
So just for those who are maybe not aware what the Wayside Club is, can you maybe give us a rough overview, Pat, of what the club is and its history?
Yeah, okay. So the Wayside Club was opened in Glasgow in 1932, quite a long time ago, and it's an operation run by the Legion of Mary. Now, most people will be familiar with the Legion of Mary as a lay organisation that works usually within parishes, doing spiritual support, evangelical and apostolate within the parish, usually a small group of people, maybe half a dozen. It's called a presidium, and they meet weekly for a prayer meeting and to discuss the work that they're doing. The Wayside Club is an unusual activity for a Legion of Mary presidium because it's out with a normal parish structure. And the club is basically a place, so it's like it's a 3-story building which has a big cafe in the middle of it. And it's designed to give somewhere where people can come in every day of the year, every evening and Saturday afternoons for something to eat, soup, sandwiches, coffee, tea and so forth. But more importantly than that really is just some company. So it allows people to come in and sit with other people. It's staffed by, there are always 2 members of the Legion Presidium on duty for any shift, supported by usually 8 or 10 volunteers. The volunteers do a lot of work in the kitchen. They prepare the food, serve it out. But the main role of the Presidium members is to interact with the patrons, the people coming in, to give them support, chat with them, give them spiritual guidance if they want it. Every session has a visit to the oratory. We have an oratory within the building with the Blessed Sacrament reserved. We'll go there for 15-20 minutes towards the end of the evening for night prayers. Patrons are invited to come. Nobody's under any duress. We usually have maybe half a dozen patrons out of the 50 or so who are in the building who will come up of an evening. We also have mass there on a Sunday evening. So I think it's an important facility for people in Glasgow, not just the homeless. Actually, because of the work the government have done in the last few years, there are relatively few people without a roof over their head in Glasgow. But a roof over your head is not the same thing as a home. Many of these people are, for various reasons, socially isolated. They're estranged from their families. They're very much on their own, and they need the company and social contact that the club offers them. Obviously, in lockdown times, we've had to change the way we do things quite a bit. So that gives you a background to what the Wayside is.
So yeah, we're obviously joined by John as well, who's having some problems with his mic, which is fine. But he'll just be there, and I appreciate all the work that he's doing. Pat, if you could tell us maybe what you could tell us, Pat, how has the pandemic affected your operations at the Wayside Club?
Yes, well, I mean, we took a decision probably the week before the government actually imposed the lockdown that based on what we understood about how the virus was working, we realised that the environment really wasn't safe. We had a lot of people. We'll have 70 people in the building in an evening, sitting almost on top of each other. The hygiene standards aren't quite what you would want. So we felt it was safest, not only for the patrons but for the staff. I mean, a lot of the volunteers are in the older age group, and we just didn't feel it was reasonable to continue. So we shut the doors and started to operate from the door. So we didn't let people into the building, but we're still providing soup and sandwiches, goodie bags, which will include toiletries and so forth as people need them. So we've been doing that again every evening and Saturday afternoons, slightly restricted hours. We don't need to be open for quite so long. probably a couple of hours in the evening, a couple of hours on a Saturday afternoon. And it's been interesting because the numbers are still high. We expected in the first week or so for the numbers to fall off. You're probably aware that the government took steps very quickly to make sure nobody had to be on the streets, and a lot of the empty hotels in the centre of Glasgow have been taken over, and people have been given rooms in the hotels. But those people are still coming to us when the doors open, partly just to have contact with somebody, but also because they benefit from the food and so forth that we're giving out. We can give out meals that are in sort of microwavable carry-out packets. We've had quite a lot of donations from various sources for that. And in these hotels, most people, they don't have access to a kitchen, but they've got access to a microwave, so they can heat this food up. So the numbers, surprisingly, didn't drop off. We thought they might, but there are a lot of people still coming. We're seeing quite an interesting mix of people. We've seen quite a few new faces, people that weren't coming before. Some of these will be people who have lost their job or have not been furloughed. They've just been laid off because they were workers rather than employees of a company or self-employed, falling on very, very difficult and hard times, and looking for help and support.
There is a kind of worry there, isn't it? I mean, obviously, once the pandemic does subside, which it will do eventually, there is going to be there's talk of that economic doom, which is possibly impending on all of us, but that will be most hard hitting on those who are most destitute already.
Yes.
What do you envisage will be one of the greatest challenges coming out the other side of this pandemic?
You mean for us?
For the general situation regarding destitution and homelessness in Glasgow.
I don't know, John. I mean, nobody really knows what the long-term economic impact of this measure has been, because we've never done it before. There's no precedent. I mean, we're going to go into a recession that I think most commentators are saying it's going to be a recession that will really put the austerity phase in the shade, and we're just going to have to deal with that. I think we will have more to do as a club. I think that this can't be good for families. It can't be good for people who are on the breadline. So we're expecting to be in business for quite a while to come. And I think probably are having to think, for us, we've been thinking about maybe we should be doing more, we should be taking on more volunteers, we should be upping our operation, and this might be the driver for that. But John,
I was just kind of thinking about the comparisons to maybe how your work might have changed post 2008 financial crash. Obviously, they're saying it's going a lot worse, so that's kind of one of the things I was drawn upon there. But obviously, there's temporary measures in place just now for the residency of homeless people in Glasgow in relation to hotels. Is that going to continue indefinitely throughout the next few months, or is that a set period of time?
No, obviously not. I don't know what the answer to that. That's not something I have any insight into. I'm not involved in I'm not sitting around the tables that are making those decisions. But there's going to be real hardship after this. That's for sure.
Yeah. And we felt that, I guess you're still involved. Both of you are still involved with Meeting Men and other people who are involved with it. Do you sense from them there's fear amongst the destitute about this pandemic, or is there more concern or less concern amongst them?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think the flat answer is no. I don't get a sense that the people that are coming to us are in the least bit worried about the virus. I mean, some of them are. You'll get some people, but they're the exception rather than the rule. And the overwhelming reaction from most people is the intolerable isolation that a lot of them are experiencing at the moment. The not being able to see. I mean, there's one of our regular helpers who has been a patron in the past, who I've got to know quite well, and I've been in touch with over the last few weeks. I mean, he's finding it very, very difficult, not being able to make contact with people, going a whole week without seeing anybody that he knows. And I think so. I get from and people are coming to the door. That's their main complaint, that they're lonely, they're isolated, they want things to get back to normal. They're not too concerned about the virus. Now, to be fair, a lot of these people are the kind of folk who aren't too caught up in the practicalities of life, to put it bluntly. You know, they live from one moment to the next, and they're not going to be thinking in terms of what's the best for the common good in the long run. They're thinking about what's affecting me right this minute.
I suppose it's only
very much
that way. I mean, some people will say, "Oh, that's terrible," but if you put yourself in those people's shoes, then it's a natural human instinct to think basic principles of survival. What do you need at this point in time? And then it's food, it's air, it's water. You know, these are the sort of things. And I think in the back of people's minds, then a risk from a virus, which is they can't maybe visualize, or given they're they're not living that kind of.
That's right. But actually, one of the most important things that they're articulating is that as important as food and air and water and all the rest of it is company. And friendship and so forth.
That's one of the key things with the Wayside Club that distinguishes you from other food banks and other services. You do provide that company and that sort of pastoral ministry. What sort of things can you still do at this point in time, given their social distancing requirements, all these sort of things?
That's right.
Yeah. How can people help the Wayside Club continue to do their important work? Is there a way that people who are watching just now who are aware of the Wayside, maybe have just heard about it for the first time, can help you during this crisis?
Well, it's the usual list of things in the correct order, which is prayers is helpful. There's the plight of the patrons, but also the volunteers and the Legion members who are exposing themselves to some degree of risk. Prayer is effective and it's essential, so we need your support in that respect. Financial support is always welcome. We've always had a very good steady flow of private donation, from £5 notes in an envelope to large donations through the bank, and that's kept coming through the crisis. But that's always very welcome. We've asked people not to donate clothing at the moment because we just have practical problems in handling it, and we've got a reasonable amount. Food is always welcome. As I was saying, one thing that is quite helpful is these small donations of maybe 10 packs of these microwavable meals. Somebody handed in the other day, the Chinese carry-out packet with half with rice and half with a curry, and they went like hotcakes. So those sort of things are useful. But by and large, we're managing on the material side. We've got a good supply chain. The cash and carries are keeping us going, so we're not struggling on that front. But we need the prayers, and we'd also just ask people to, while they're praying about the Wayside, is to ask themselves, when things do settle down and we get back to some sort of normality, everybody's going to be making big adjustments to their life and how they live their lives. Could you help with your time and your manpower at some stage in the future, particularly for people who are maybe getting close to retirement and get a bit of extra time? That would be very welcome. So we're doing, I think, at the material front, we're doing okay. Yeah.
We'll ask people who are watching this interview and other people on our sites, we'll raise awareness of the Wayside, because I think it's a very, very important club. It's always been a name synonymous with goodness and good charity work in Glasgow. So we pray that will continue. We'll pray for your work as well. I'd like to thank you both. I'd like to thank John in particular for his patience, who's down there. He surely had a lot to say, but we'll hopefully hear from him another day when we're not having... We've had terrible problems trying to do this video, because I've done over 40 lockdown interviews, and we tried it last night. We had terrible signal issues, and tried it this morning, and John's been inhaling helium for his breakfast. So
yes, it's the devil's up to
I wish you
no
both well, and continue to stay safe and continue doing
John, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye.